Hey Gemma and Mr. Legend, can you make me a gaming PC using a 3D printer but then stop halfway through?
No problem, kid.
Here you go! That's exactly what I wanted! Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, with the arrival of Title Update 1 for Monster Hunter Wilds, we've got new hunts, new equipment, and with new equipment we of course have some interesting new skills as well, with the one causing the most commotion within the community instantly after the update dropped being Whiteflame Torrent. This weapon skill is attached to Shia's high-rank weapons. There is no other way to get the skills except for from Shia weapons. It has one rank for the skill, active or inactive if you don't have it, and it only comes from using the weapons themselves. So what does it do? Well, of course, it's a chance to deal additional damage after landing an attack. Is that not clear enough? Oh, well, also it doesn't stack with Scorcher, but does add extra fire damage. So if you, like many people, read the description of this, then your eyebrow twitched and you muttered angrily, what does that even mean? Well, this is the place for you. Like we've done with pretty much every time a new skill gets added to a Monster Hunter game, we sat down and tested this one for quite a bit, and I do mean we for this one because it was more of a group effort on the channel, as this skill is just really weird, and it helps to have input from multiple different weapon mains. That said, let's dive into what the skill actually means, what the effect does, how you can control it, whether it's actually good, like properly worth using, its general value, and we'll of course talk about the unique interaction with Scorcher as well. Speaking of which, this skill is closer tied to Scorcher than you might expect, because it actually seems to have the exact same proc conditions as the Scorcher set bonus does from the Rathalos and Guardian Rathalos equipment. After quite a bit of testing with various attack intervals and just to spam attacking, it matches perfectly, and we saw what worked best and how it differed. And it's not perfect, but I think we've got a pretty good idea of how this works, especially knowing that it is the exact same stuff as for Scorcher. I'm going to try and explain this in the least complex way possible, but it's definitely a funky one, so stay with me. For Whiteflame Torrent, the first time that you hit a monster, every 3 seconds, you have a 1 in 3 chance of triggering the extra damage from this skill. This has bad luck protection to make sure that it will always happen on the 3rd round in a row of this happening if you don't get it prior. When this proc happens from Whiteflame Torrent alone, it is 50 damage, regardless of the hit zones or your stats or anything like that. It is always 50 flat damage to the body part you hit. If when you first hit a monster, or the training dummy in this case, you get that extra pop of 50 come up, that is the skill triggering, and you can see this even has a different color than normal damage numbers to make it stand out. That means once this triggers, it cannot happen again for a minimum of 3 seconds, no matter what you do. The absolute minimum between these procs is 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, your next hit against the monster will again roll a chance to trigger this. If it procs that bonus hit, that bonus 50 damage, the process will fully reset after the 3-second timer and you'll go back to just sort of standard. If it does not proc the bonus damage, that same 3-second timer will begin, and your next hit after that is a 1 in 3 chance of triggering, but if it doesn't happen again this second time, it is guaranteed to happen on the 3rd cycle. So you will see me walking in circles to sort of count time in my head while I was trying to work out the spacing and the timing in between each of these and how it works. Essentially, if you are straight up hitting the monster non-stop endlessly, if you are attacking the monster every frame of every second, which is impossible, but if you could, it would trigger after 3 seconds at the fastest, or 9 seconds at the longest, which means on average, you will have this skill trigger every 6 seconds as long as you are consistently attacking the monster. The way that this works makes it much worse for slower, bigger, clunkier weapons like hammer and greatsword, and much better for faster weapons like sword and shield, or dual blades, or bow, because you are more likely to land an attack as close to that 3-second cooldown as possible, meaning that you will trigger the 50 damage bonus pops as frequently as you could. And with faster weapons, I would expect that average proc rate to be once every 6 seconds. But it gets less frequent if you are running a weapon with slower attacks or combos, and less frequent if you spend any time repositioning or dodging instead of actually hitting the monster. So the theoretical proc rate in a perfect situation would be 1 proc per 6 seconds, but more likely you'll end up with less than that in a real hunt, so take that number with a bit of a grain of salt. As well, while most attacks seem perfectly capable of triggering this, it's worth mentioning that from my testing, shelling would not apply this extra damage from gunlance, but the melee hits do. It works with charge blades blades, file hits, and with savage axe mode, which is actually one of the best ways of triggering this skill as consistently as you can, because it hits really frequently, and it does work. Then for bows specifically, it seems like it only triggers from regular shots and spread shots, not from arc shot, dragon piercer, or thousand dragons. So to preface this next part, the skill has less value for slow weapons, for low mobility weapons, and for gunlance with a shelling focus, or dragon piercer heavy bow setups especially. That said, the next question is, how much actual value does this skill have then? Well, again, I think some of the best contenders for getting high value out of it will be sword and shield, dual blades, lance, charge blade, these types of weapons that can hit quickly, frequently, and consistently, while all being able to sort of stick to the monster with good repositioning in their moveset too. With a weapon where you stick active to the monster perfectly, you'd be getting an average proc of 1 every 6 seconds, which would make it 50 damage every 6 seconds. The value this has is essentially inverse to the power of your build and how fast you are at hunting as a result. Because this is a flat damage proc that will happen, it will not scale with your build. It doesn't care about how much attack you have, it doesn't care if you crit. That means its relative value is higher the worse that your build is as a whole, and the faster that your hunts are, the less you will get out of it as well. Unlike something like Blast, where you get most of your procs within the first couple of minutes, and then it starts to slow down pretty quickly, this stays at a stable rate of application throughout a hunt. It doesn't have thresholds that gain resistances or anything like that, so the longer the hunt goes, the more value you will get out of this instead of something like a status, but that's also keeping in mind that these weapons all have dragon element on them forced, and it's hard to judge the skill without mentioning that it is tied completely to the Shia weapons right now at least, though I am hopeful in a future title update maybe we'll get like a 3-slot weapon decoration for the Whiteflame Torrent skill to slot it into other weapons too. For reference in actual numbers then, I beat up the training dummy a hell of a lot with this skill while I was testing this, but a good example of an average test here that I did the same 7-hit chop combo into lateral slash combo on repeat 14 times for sword and shield, with the goal being to hit 10,000 damage and then finish whatever the active combo was that I was doing before stopping. This was done in an otherwise very meta setup to actually represent the damage, and over the course of 55 seconds, which was how long it took to actually reach and surpass 10,000 damage, I got 9 procs of Whiteflame Torrent. This means an average of 1 every 6.1 seconds while using a very consistent and frequent hitting combo with a fast weapon. This matches my earlier estimations of an ideal situation with 9 procs of the skill during this time that would make 450 damage out of 10,119 total. This makes it right around 4.5% of the damage that we did during that time, which means that with a weapon that can attack frequently, you're looking at about 4.5% of your damage coming from the skill if you use it, over not having that skill in the same setup. For comparison, from a slower weapon, Josh was testing with Greatsword. His trial went to 10,916 damage over 28 hits. This took 63 seconds to do, and there were 7 procs during this time, for 350 damage from the skill. That means overall, 3.2% of his damage done during that time came directly from the skill. That was a rate of getting 1 proc per 9 seconds on average, which is what I would say is the very low end of things. It's something that you could expect from the very slow weapons. However, the thing is, because this skill is locked to the weapon that it is, you also have to consider the lack of decoration slots, which is a big deal for some weapons. Then you also have to consider the fact that you're locked to dragon element, so if you wanted to use a different element or bring a status with you, you just couldn't do that with this skill. But that's getting into the territory of judging the weapons instead of just the skill, and today I want to focus on the skill, and the simple answer is, for the most part, the skill is pretty good. It's enough of a difference that Shia weapons are at least comparable to Artian weapons, if not equal in all circumstances, which we will dive into in a lot more detail tomorrow. But outside of that, in the world where this skill was just a 3-slot decoration, it would be something that you would use with some weapons, but not all of them, and not in every build. But again, I think the important thing to take from this is that it gains value in builds that have less damage overall. So if you are someone who likes to have a lot of comfort skills in your build, if you're not just pumping pure damage through your actual armor skills, then this actual skill on this weapon would probably push Shia weapons to be stronger than Artian weapons for you. It is a very variable skill that's hard to directly quantify the value for, because there's RNG, there's timers, there's variables on how frequently you hit the monster within a quest, not just your weapon, but you as a player, your playstyle, and how good you are at the game, but in general I'd say you're looking at getting anywhere from 3% up to 4.5% damage increase through a hunt, depending on your weapon of choice and how well you stick to the monster, compared to not using this skill at all. For a breakdown more dependent on quest time, with perfect uptime you'd get average of 10 procs per minute, so 500 damage per minute. Use that to sort of think about how long your quests go and work out how much exactly you'd get. A slower, less consistent weapon would still likely see 1 per 8 or 9 seconds on average, so let's call that 8.5 procs per minute, which would be 425 damage per minute. The longer the quest goes, the more that adds up to being worth it. That said, there's one final layer to all of this too, which is how does the weapon skill interact with the Scorcher set bonus on Rathalos and Guardian Rathalos equipment? Well, that set bonus has the exact same activation conditions, which is why it is specifically mentioned in Whiteflame Torrent, which specifies that it does not stack with Scorcher, but adds extra fire damage. And what this actually means specifically is that it won't give you separate procs from Scorcher. They trigger at the same time when they do happen, but whenever it happens, it increases the damage, giving you both the 50 damage from Whiteflame Torrent, but then you also get a big chunk of fire damage on top of that. The 50 damage from Whiteflame Torrent will stay as 50 damage no matter what hit zone you hit, nothing like that, as we talked about earlier, but the fire damage from Scorcher that's added on top will change the amount done based on the fire damage weakness of the hit zone that you're attacking. That said, going full 4 pieces of Rathalos armor is a pretty wild setup to go in general. It's not the strongest choice, but if there were a monster that was specifically weak to both fire and dragon in significant amounts, and you were also using a fast weapon type that hits consistently, then maybe there's a world that this could work to use full Scorcher and also Whiteflame Torrent, but I think you just have to invest too much into put all of its stuff together. It's a neat concept, it's cool that they work together like this, especially as Whiteflame Torrent is essentially Wilk that you then get popped by Scorcher's fire damage, but this is only really useful information to know about as a gimmick at the moment. Definitely not strong enough to be better than just using a standard fire element focus build with a proper fire weapon, or a standard raw focus build with the Shia weapon instead. But it's cool that they use this to tell us that the skill works in a very, very consistent way with Scorcher in general for people who had already tested that, so that's neat. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Overall, it seems like the skill is honestly solid. Whether it makes the weapon worth using over a perfectly rolled Artian weapon or not depends heavily on your weapon type and your build as a whole, as well as your playstyle, but we'll cover that in far more detail tomorrow. For now, I just wanted to focus on the skill itself, look into every aspect that I can, make sense of every bit of the vague, confusing description that I can, so I can try and make it easier for other people to understand too. And I also wanted to let you all know that it's at least close enough in value to Artian weapons that you can use them if you just prefer the visuals. And hopefully now that we all understand the skill better, we can come up with some fun ways of using it too. I hope you've all enjoyed this and let me know any of your own thoughts on this skill in the comments down below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.